So I'm here this afternoon with Lauren. Hello, Lauren. How are you?
Hello, very well, thank you. Not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. And thank you for joining me, obviously to discuss the wonderful subject of self-development, self-management and future-proofing yourself for your career. I'm really looking forward to finding out about how you're constantly and continuing to upskill yourself from your university days and into the working environment. To hear about some of the things that have gone well and perhaps some of the things that haven't gone so well, some of the challenges.
Yeah.
And what advice have you been given that's been good? And what have you learned about yourself? And then I'm really interested in about the future, about your market, your company you're currently working with, that you'll tell us all about, how that may change over the next few years, routes to market and things like that, and how you're going to continue to develop yourself. So the first question is, if you could just give us a brief overview of your story from your education into the working environment.
Of course. So I went to the University of Exeter, where I studied business management and marketing with Spanish, which I really enjoyed. I also did a placement as part of my degree, a year in industry, where I worked for Prospect Soft in their marketing department, which I thoroughly enjoyed because it was a really small company. So they gave me a lot of responsibility, which was great. Then after graduating, I worked for a startup, an events company called White Label Live in London, where I also had a marketing role, but because it was a startup, I was also given lots of other different projects and roles, which was great, because again, I also learned an incredible amount. It was a really great team, so I enjoyed my time there. But then about 6 months into that role, I realised that actually I wanted to go travelling. That's what I did. I went off to Southeast Asia and to Australasia because I thought if I didn't do it then, sort of early on in my career, then when would I? So I did that and I enjoyed that very much. And then I came back and I applied for a role at Pernod Ricard, which is where I am today. And I absolutely love the company. I think the alcohol industry is a really fun, fast-paced, challenging industry to be working in. So really enjoying my role. And originally I had a customer marketing role where I was on the Tesco account for 18 months. And then I've very recently just moved into the brand marketing team where I'm now the assistant brand manager on Absolute Vodka. And when I say recent, this is week 2, so very new into role.
Good to you.
But yeah, that's a bit of me.
Brilliant. And thinking about moving from the university and studying environment to the working environment, how different has that been, and what your expectations of what it was going to be like when you're at university and studying to what the reality is? Is there much difference?
Good question. And I think this might sound a bit ridiculous, but I don't think I really realised how much time you actually spend at work. You know, it really is a lot of time, especially when you include your commute there and back. Yeah. And you've got to really love your work and be passionate about your job because, you know, like I said, you spend so much time there. I don't think I really realised that when I was back at university sort of 3 or 4 years ago. So that's kind of a big change for me, or something that I wasn't quite expecting. And then another thing I think also was the change in feedback. And what I mean by that is that at school and at university, you kind of always get regular feedback on your work, whether it's good, whether it's bad, any sort of room for improvement. But once you get into the working career, you lose that constant feedback, or maybe you'd get it initially in the first couple of months from your manager from starting. But after that, you get it once every sort of quarter or twice a year. So I think I wasn't expecting that. I think I struggled with that initially because I wanted constant feedback. So yeah, those are the 2 things I would say. Yeah,
I mean, companies should do it. Managers and leaders, we drum it into them on leadership and management courses, and you know, about giving feedback because it is so important, and also then receiving feedback from you as well. Because I always say to managers when I do management leadership programs, what do your people think of you? And they go, well, I'd rather not know. And I said, well, if you don't know, how can you do anything about it? How can you understand the impact you're having? So taking your studying days, your traveling, because I think that's just so vitally important, and well done to you for making that decision to move, and the working. What have you learned about yourself that you're applying into your everyday sort of life?
I think I've learned a lot of different skills that have more probably soft skills that have helped me in my working life. So I think working in a team. So I obviously have done a lot of group projects and coursework, and sort of I've worked in I've been in sports teams. So I think I've learned how to work with different people and learned to appreciate that we all have different skills and abilities, and you can bring that together to create something even better. So I think that's a really big thing that I've learned. Another really key thing, again, is another skill is sort of presentation skills and public speaking skills, which I think is really, really useful in my job at the moment, because I'm always sort of presenting to sort of internal key stakeholders or external clients. So I really value and appreciate that experience and that I had at school and at university. So I think, those are the sort of two key things that I really pulled out. And also obviously my degree. So I studied marketing at university. So it's quite good that I've got a marketing role, because I could now actually bring in a lot of the theory that I did learn at uni now into place into my role now, which is great.
And anything else from your travels?
Just people skills, good communication skills. Obviously when you're traveling, there might be barriers, communication barriers, so realizing that it's not just the words that are coming out, it's all your body language and how you interact with people. So I think all of those skills that perhaps at the time I didn't realize are going to be useful later on in my career have actually now become really, really helpful and useful.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, great. And best piece of advice you've been given?
That actually your soft skills are just as important, or at times even more important than your hard skills. Working life is all about people, and those relationships are so important. It's really key to kind of build your network as early on in your career as possible, because you never know what opportunities will arise from them. And then following on from that is to take opportunities when they're presented to you. This is so important to be able to progress in your career. And if I'm honest, in my current role, that's kind of what happened. I was loving my custom marketing role at Pernod Ricard. I wasn't planning to change roles, but then an opportunity came up and I just knew that I couldn't miss it. So I went for it. So I think those two bits of advice that have really kind of stuck in my mind. Yeah.
And taking that opportunity, did you have reservations about it?
Yes, definitely, massively. Because like I said, I was still really loving my role and I was still learning lots, and my team was really, really great. So it was a little bit of a risk, I would say, whether I jumped the gun too quickly or not. But then it was I thought a fantastic opportunity, so it was almost worth the risk. And so far so good.
And we have this lovely thing in the training world and sort of the speaking world called imposter syndrome, where we worry but we're going to be good enough.
Yeah.
Was there a little bit of that?
Definitely. Big role, it's a big brand, so I was worried, should I have spent more time in my role before progressing?
Go for it. And everybody gets that imposter syndrome. I talk to, obviously have the great opportunity to speak to all sorts of people in different businesses, and it's amazing how even higher up you go, quite often they have this imposter syndrome, and the self-esteem and confidence is a big issue. And this is why it's important to reflect on a regular basis about what you have achieved. And especially if you're not getting a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
And it is once a quarter just to sit down, what have I learned, how have I developed, what can I do now that I couldn't do before? Yeah. And then you suddenly realise, well, hey, look, I'm actually doing really well at this. And a bit of self-praise doesn't go amiss.
Very true. Very good advice.
And it is really important that you continue to develop that self-esteem and confidence. We all suffer from it. You'll be amazed, what types of people do suffer from that. So what have you enjoyed most about being in the working environment?
What have I enjoyed most? I've loved being challenged. I think that's kind of a big thing when you're passionate about a role. You know, when you're challenged at the time, you may not appreciate that, and you might think, oh, why did my manager give me this role? I'm not ready for it. But actually, when you are put outside your comfort zone and you are stretched, when you do complete the challenge, because you always do, you get the most amazing feeling of accomplishment and reward, and in a weird kind of way you can almost see your self-development and your progression, which I just find really fulfilling. So that's something that I'm really enjoying. And then also I think it's all about the people. I've met some amazing people in my career so far. I've loved sort of building those relationships with people and talking to people from all levels. Yeah, and I think in my office where I've got the opportunity to, it's an open planned office where you can go and speak to anyone. I think I've really enjoyed that, even if it's 2 minutes at the coffee station. I've enjoyed building those relationships with people.
Yeah, and yeah, there again, as we said about our lockdown, it's important that we keep that going and make the effort.
Definitely, and it's definitely harder to do that now. So yeah, very true.
And I always say to people, you know, invest in others and then they'll invest time in you. That when we think about our network, you've got to be a giver, not a taker.
Yeah.
And if you make the effort to keep in contact with people now, they would appreciate you for that. It's just sometimes those just little things that make a big difference, which are really important. Anything that sort of you've had sort of those scary sort of butterfly moments, as I call it, or we should have put a bit more right guard on moment, as I call it as well, that sort of really challenged you? That you're happy to talk about?
Yeah. I think within my role, there's been a number of times where I've, not within Pernod Ricard, but other examples in my career where I've kind of just been put on the spot and kind of encouraged to get up and present, and I find that really like challenging because I'm not used to just kind of getting up and speaking to an audience that I'm not familiar with. But I think over time I've got a lot better at that, and obviously you become more practiced and well rehearsed, and so you can just do that. I guess another thing outside of work that I found a bit of a challenge is the balance between work life and social life, and I think it's just because obviously I care about my role and I want to do well, so I end up leaving late from work and then getting home too late to then go to the gym, or to then late to see my friends, and so I think that I found that a bit of a challenge as well, just getting that balance right. But then I think a lot of people do, and it's something that you just have to over time get used to. So that's probably something I could be working on as well.
I've always sort of said it's having a contract with yourself.
That's a good way. So
when I left my education to go to work, I promised myself I would never ever work weekends.
Yeah. Mainly
because I wanted to go and play football, and I used to play a lot of football. That's why my knees are shot now. But even now running my business for the last 20 years, I very rarely ever work weekends. And a lot of my friends who run their businesses, I worked all weekend. And I just look at them and go, why?
Yeah.
So my contract with myself is to work long hours, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, slightly less Thursday and Friday, but very rarely, unless I absolutely have to, because I'm really, really busy, and something really majors on, or I work a weekend. And I think sometimes just deciding what your contract is with yourself helps you to get that work-life balance, because otherwise, it's interesting. I've got to say this quietly, but my wife is working from home, Michelle, who you've met, and she's working longer hours now than ever.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Why is that? She goes, we're really busy. I said, that's because this is all here. You can't let it go.
It's almost an expectation to always be available and to always be online.
And feeling you have to do that, and managing that is really, really important. And managing other, because I'll be careful saying this, but I never say this in front of my clients. But in my role and my business, I very rarely answer emails straight away, because I always want them to think I'm busy. So I will answer it the next day so I can take control of it, so I don't feel I'm glued.
Yeah,
because you create that expectation.
Yeah.
And we're getting worse and worse at that. So let me just, so I've just got to look at the next question. If you could roll the clock back
Yeah.
and perhaps give yourself advice, or perhaps someone else who's in their university or studying days and wants to go into marketing, what advice would you give them?
Good question. I would say to just really believe in yourself, you know, be confident, because you've got a wealth of experience from university, from school, you know, so you should feel confident and valued from the day that you walk into that office. You know, don't be afraid to speak out, to put forward your views, even if you're in a meeting room full of directors and senior managers. Although you should acknowledge and respect their years of experience, you know, share your voice, you know, bring that fresh perspective, because ultimately I think that will be valued, especially in a fast-paced industry like mine. New ideas and fresh perspectives are, you know, that's what's going to drive creativity and push creative boundaries. So I think that's really important. And if I'm being really honest with myself, I probably didn't do that as well as I could have, because I think I thought, oh well, I'm new to the industry, only a couple of years in. You know, someone's been in the industry a lot longer than I've been, so they'll know better, when actually that's not the case. So I think that's kind of one big piece of advice, I would say.
Yeah, I think what you say there, saying what you respect the situation and their experience and levels, but you're still there to add value, to crack on and provide it.
Exactly.
And yeah, you know, we all sort of make our own little mistakes along the way that we learn from, but yeah, people will appreciate you, because that's what they're paying for you to do, you know, to deliver. And I think that's really good. So I'm going to come on to the next part, something you just said about the different generations perhaps in the working environment in a moment. But before that question, how do you see your industry and the marketing in your industry changing in, well, I was going to say in the next few years, the next few months, perhaps, in the near future?
Everything is changing. You know, our products are changing regularly due to changes in consumption habits and mindsets and trends. The way that we are selling our products is changing. It's not all about the traditional store format anymore. There's a lot more different sort of route to markets that are now available for us to sell our products in. So that's really interesting. Then more specifically within my marketing role, the way that I interact with consumers, those sort of key touch points where I can engage and promote and kind of build a relationship with our consumer is changing rapidly by the day. And all of that is really due to technology and how fast it's changing. So it really means that we've got to constantly be upskilling ourselves and developing our skills, because I could be talking about a sort of a marketing technique today, a new one today, that's actually, you know, before long that will be the norm. So if we kind of don't keep up, then we'll be left behind. So I think everything is changing rapidly, but that's good. I think that's what keeps it exciting and a challenge.
Good for you. And going back to what you briefly mentioned in the previous question was, you know, do you find there is a difference? Obviously you don't have to answer this, but I'd love it if you did. In terms of the generations in the working environment, I think it's fair to say that now the working environment has never had such huge age diversity in so many different ways. And I spend a lot of time obviously talking to people of my age, mid-career, but I love speaking to people who are not even, I do quite a lot of talks in schools and colleges. And I always say, why do you think I'm here? And they say, you want to give something back? I said, no, I just want to learn from you. You know, how do you see it? And you know, there again, doing these interviews with yourself and some of the other people that you know, I find it very insightful. So do you see a difference in the generations?
Massively. Yes. And I see it as a real big opportunity for businesses. You know, obviously, being a couple of years into the industry, I can learn a wealth of knowledge from sort of my colleagues that have been in the industry 20 to 30 years. But also the fact that those sort of established employees can actually learn so much from us and our fresh perspective. For example, the way that I drink drinks and the way that I consume spirits is very different to how my parents would or how an older generation would. And piece of insight, and that knowledge is so key for like our new products that we enter into the market. And so yeah, I think it's a massive opportunity, but only for the businesses that realize that, you know, that knowledge should be flowing both ways. It shouldn't just be going from top down. Yeah, but it's really interesting. And I think if we kind of almost need to train ourselves to be really inquisitive and constantly ask questions in the workplace, and so that we're constantly engaging, we're constantly bouncing ideas off each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that word inquisitive is so important. I often say to people, you know, what were you like when you're 7 or 8 and you're always asking questions?
Yeah.
And you won't have seen it yet necessarily, but the video I did with Matt, I got out I talked about his traction engine.
Oh. Oh, brilliant.
And the fact that he blew it up.
I didn't.
And Benny was really young because he go, can I have a go? Can I have a go? Can I have a go? And he was really inquisitive. And I'm always saying to people, you've got to continue to be inquisitive. It's the people that ask the best questions get the best information. And with the best information, you can make the best decisions. But if you don't try things and be inquisitive or just make assumptions, you never know what you're going to get. So to finish off with then, Lauren, what's on her plans in terms of development and growth and trying to keep her one step ahead of it all?
I think, like you say, ultimately you want to constantly be developing and learning constantly. And perhaps one way that you can do that is to make the most of the people around you. So I'm quite lucky, and I do have a couple of figures in my life that I almost look up to as a bit of a mentor, to talk to kind of learn from, to challenge me, or to advise me on sort of what areas I need developing on, which I want to continue to do. And I probably don't speak to them enough, so that's definitely something that I need to focus on. But obviously that's easier said than done. A lot of people don't have a mentor figure, and there's lots of other ways that you can sort of keep yourself relevant. So I'm trying to also read a lot of articles, sort of, you know, always keeping marketing news. I'm reading a lot of articles in marketing news and also tech news to make sure I understand, you know, what's the new things that are out. And then also to make the most of the resources available to me at work. So like many other offices, there's lots of training available. And I think it's really easy to kind of be really focused on your day-to-day job and to kind of almost forget about your self-development. So I think that's something that I'm really trying to focus on, to make sure I do definitely put some time in to really focus on, you know, my training. So I think, yeah, there's lots of different ways, but I think it's the time, making sure that you've set the time for it, which I think is the challenging thing. Because it's really easy to kind of push that aside and say, oh, I'll do that tomorrow, and then you never do it. So yeah.
Brilliant. Good for you. Okay, so yeah, thank you for that. It's been excellent. And the bits that I particularly liked, I like what you said about having to quickly get up and present.
Yeah.
And I think this is important, so people see as a subject expert that, you know, and I do this, you know, you flick through any page of my book and say, give me a title, I'm happy to stand up and talk about it because I've taught myself to do that. And I think that really is a good way of demonstrating that you are capable and competent. So I think that's a really good tip that you gave there. The other thing that I really like is you saying about, have I been in the role long enough, or should I do this first, or should I take this opportunity? Yeah, go and do it. You'll soon find out, won't you?
Yeah, exactly.
As long as you keep learning along the way is the important. And I also like about, I talk about them a lot, comfort zone challenges and being stretched.
Yeah.
That is so important, and this constant upskilling. And I like what you said at the end about having lots of people to talk to and having sort of mentor people. And you don't have to sort of say, will you be my mentor? No. You just need to, as I've done, I've got people that I love talking to. I class them as my mentors, but I'd never tell them that. They'd be highly embarrassed. But there were certain people I love going to talk to because they just think so differently to me, which is a good thing, because I know how David thinks, but I want to learn how other people think. So I've got a bigger access to ideas. So thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.
We'll put your details on a banner, and if people want to link in with you and things. We've obviously been doing this as part of a whole series of videos and podcasts we're doing with, so we've spoken to Johnny, Matt and Rowan so far. And we've got one more special guest that I'm talking to, I think it's tomorrow. I'll have to look at my diary. And yeah, so thank you for your participation in that, and hopefully get to see you again soon.
Yeah, oh, you're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.